Hey everyone, welcome back to American Government and Politics at Simmons College. Um, Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to comment below that you watched the video. That's how you get your participation and attendance grades for the class. If you don't comment on it, it makes me think you haven't seen it, and it's the easiest way to get most of your credit for this class. Just comment that you watched the video, and also any questions or comments related to the material that you may have. I do want to tell you that I did find out that Simmons College has, I believe, 10 copies still left of the book. So first come, first serve. That's almost enough for everyone, I think. But those are free. I think that you borrow them for the semester. I'm not really sure how it works, but I know they have them. You need to talk to Keisha Barger about that. During the COVID pandemic, she's not in the office every day. She works from home a lot. So you need to email her and let her know that you need a book and schedule a time to come to her office and pick it up from her. I will put her email in the first comment to this video. Or I'll put it in the video information. Whatever. You'll see it on the video. You know what I'm talking about. You'll see it on there. And again, it's Keisha Barger, but I will put her contact information, post it with this video, and reach out to her if you need a copy of the book. So with that, let's get into the material. This will be another short video because this is just an introduction to the section we're going to be talking about, which are the building blocks for the rest of the semester. This is some of the driest stuff we'll have all semester, but it's important. You got to wrap your heads around the stuff I'm going to talk about the next few videos beginning today in order to understand some of the more interesting and pertinent stuff. But first and foremost, I want to ask you all to think about something, something I mentioned briefly on the last video, and that's how government and politics impact your lives. The people in political power in the United States and around the world, they make decisions that affect all of us, whether we know about it or not. So it's in your best interest with whatever. I know these days most people don't have much time on their hands, but make time if you have to. Know a little bit about what's going on in the world around you. Sorry, my dog's barking at me here. Sorry, buddy. Anyway, so that you know about how these people who technically work for us, the government, how they make decisions that impact you. And let me explain what I mean by that. Today I'm going to do a brief overview of 3 branches of government. That's the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Why do we care? Well, all 3 of those branches and I'm talking today just about federal government, all 3 of those branches of federal government do things that impact all of us. If you don't believe me, let me ask you this. Have any of you received the COVID-19 stimulus checks or relief checks in the last year? Most of you should have. I know for me, it took me a while to get it. I had to kind of fight to get it, but that was a combination of the executive branch and the legislative branch, making a pretty expensive but simple decision that people were hurting financially during the pandemic because they're getting laid off from their jobs and that kind of thing, and they have increased child care burdens and so forth. So they have a little extra money. That's a controversial thing, but it's something the government tends to do anytime that we have an economic slowdown in this country. So that's one way. That's one thing. But what about the things that you read in the news that are horrifying, that are even more controversial and certainly upsetting to many of us? Things like police killings of people of color and police interactions with mentally ill people on the streets of Louisville and around the country. The way that those situations play out and the laws that tend to protect police officers and sometimes tend to be both good and bad for the people that interact with police officers, those are set by the again, legislative and executive branches of government. And then the judicial branch, that third branch you don't hear about as much, the judicial branch, they interpret whether or not the laws are constitutional, whether or not those laws are valid laws in the United States. Now, I just said a bunch of stuff about laws, and I'll explain more later in this semester, but for now, what you need to know is that there are three branches of government. Three branches of the federal government. That's executive branch, legislative, judicial. The executive branch, run by the President of the United States. I almost said the President is elected. The President is elected, but it's a complicated process that hopefully we all learned more about in the last few months. The legislative branch at the federal level is Congress. And members of Congress, I'll talk more about this on Wednesday. Members of Congress are elected by the people of the different states. They pass legislation that is then signed by the president. That's how the legislative and executive branches work together to make federal law, federal statutes. What about that judicial branch? At the federal level, judicial branch is the United States Supreme Court, circuit courts, and district courts, federal district courts. Federal judges are appointed by the president, confirmed by part of Congress, and those are lifetime appointments. They're not elected. Now, before the next quiz, sometime between now and February 20th, I'm going to talk a little bit more about state and local governments. That's where it gets more complicated when it comes to judiciary and the judges. But the federal judges in this country, again, appointed for life. Until they retire, they die. They're not elected by the people. That is controversial. I'll talk more about that later. What you need to know right now is that the Constitution of the United States is the ultimate law. And it's up to those federal judges to determine whether or not the laws, lesser laws, smaller laws in the Constitution, made by Congress and the President, whether or not those are allowable under the Constitution, whether they are constitutional. For example, part of the Constitution says that that state and local governments cannot treat people differently. It's called equal protection. I'm not saying that's always the way it goes in the real world, but that is what the Constitution says. So if someone passes a law saying, for example, Christians should be treated differently than Muslims in the United States, if that's a law, that's not constitutional. And some federal judge would say so almost immediately. That's the gist of it. That's the basics, the nuts and bolts of what those three branches do. So, takeaway from this evening's lecture. Number one, there are books for free at Simmons College. Contact Keisha Barger and I'll post her email with this video below. Number two, there are three branches of the federal government. Executive, legislative, and judicial. We'll unpack some of these ideas and talk about them in more detail in the next couple weeks. In the meantime, I hope y'all are staying safe. I hope you and your families are safe from COVID and everything else going on in the world. And wish you all well. Don't forget to comment below that you watched the video. Thank you so much. See y'all on Wednesday.